As public schools prepare to reopen tomorrow, teachers' unions are raising concerns about their readiness. Naptosa is one of 5 unions that have conducted national state of readiness surveys. I'm joined now by Naptosa's Executive Director, Basil, Manuel, to discuss this. Thank you very much, Mr. Manuel, for joining us. Now, of course, tomorrow is the day that we're expecting thousands of pupils to head back to school. What would you say? Are we ready?
Well, if we are asking, is every school ready, then the answer is no. However, let us also be fair that between the 18th, when we did the first survey as the collective of unions, and the 9th, when we did the second one, there was a massive improvement in readiness. But at the moment, there are approximately 66% of schools saying we are absolutely ready. And then the others are saying we are ready with certain aspects, but there are gaps. And that is what we are worried about. And remember, the purpose of our survey is to point out to the department where the problems lie, so that we can have a smooth start to the school year, and so that we have no compromising of anybody's health and safety.
Let's look at the rural areas, Mr. Manuel. How are we doing there? We've had a lot of concern there. Even before, COVID-19, there were concerns in rural areas. How are we doing there in terms of PPE, for instance?
Well, it is our rural provinces that are the furthest behind. We are talking about KZN, we're talking about the Eastern Cape, Mpumalanga, the Northwest, and Limpopo. They all show various levels of readiness, but also the biggest gaps are shown there. And that is very worrying. And of course, when one hears the Eastern Cape, for example, saying that, and by the way, not the only one, that schools need to procure some of these things from their own funds or from the norms and standards allocations. This is very worrying, simply because, remember, these monies are dedicated to other things. And of the schools, a large percentage, 25% of them are saying, we don't have that money to spend. And this then means that there will be, of course, a gap. And we've got to find a way to ensure that the provinces that are battling financially are able to assist. Now, one of our unions has said maybe we need a stimulus package, and Naptosa wants to support that view, that maybe we need to be looking at things differently. The gaps are just too big in terms of not only COVID procurement issues, but overcrowding, the supply of schools, making permanent those very important interventions with water. We know that water was supplied in tanks, with tankers supplying. But is that sustainable? And the only way we're going to get sustainability is if we have some form of stimulus, some form of additional income, which is going to assist provinces and schools to be really ready and sustain that readiness, because that is what we are calling for.
And this obviously shows, Mr. Manuel, the inequalities in the country. It basically just strengthens that gap.
Absolutely. The provinces that are better off are much further ahead than the provinces that aren't. But then also it comes further down to a lower level, where schools that are better off are completely ready and can actually do even more, whilst the schools that don't have lag further and further behind. And it goes to much more than just the PPE and just material readiness. It goes to what do we do when we return and we have this staggered or rather alternative days approach to teaching. Some schools will not have a break because their children will be taught, but the vast majority will still have a break because there's nothing happening in the alternate days when they're at home. The question is, what have we learned from 2020? What intervention measures have we put in place? And we know that we can't put a tablet in every child's hand and data with every child, but surely there are some beginning points. Whether it is church halls, whether it's temples, whether it's mosques, surely we can do something to ensure that at least our grade 11s are also getting additional material. Because one of our great concerns coming out of our survey is our matriculants, because the grade 11s, many hadn't finished the syllabi last year. And now they are catching up last year's work together with the matric work. And that is a very tall order. And we are extremely worried about those.
How's the anxiety amongst the teachers? They went back last week. They're expecting pupils tomorrow. How's the anxiety there?
Naptosa has been at pains to make a point about the psychological impact of COVID, not only on teachers and education workers and our FET college people, but generally in the country. However, teachers, education workers have a triple whammy. They're dealing with their own things, they're dealing with the school that they work in and the suffering that their colleagues have had. And then come tomorrow, they will be dealing with the children who return. And remember that teachers are the only counselor some of these children know. And they are the only counselor that they will go to tell their stories of pain and grief. And so it's a heavy burden to carry. Our intervention measures insofar as psychological assistance for the people in schools is inadequate, children and teachers. We need to be doing much, much more. And we are worried. More than 50% of our teachers are saying, we know we've had nothing and I'm sinking under the weight of the burden I'm carrying. Some schools are managing it. Some schools have used the intervention measures. But as I've said, those are inadequate. And we are really worried. Our most important resource is our human resources. If we don't look after them, if we don't take care of them, we are going to find that they can't care for their charges, these millions of children that are so important to us.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time. That is, of course, Naptosa Executive Director Basil Manuel. Minister Angie Motshekga will be giving an update on the state of readiness of government schools reopening this week. That briefing is happening at 3 o'clock, and we have it live here on ENCA.